This week on Christian World News, the first British citizen convicted of a thought crime. Army veteran Adam Smith Connor talks about the dream that took him to an abortion clinic and the prayer that led to his arrest and conviction.
Plus, can one stone change the course of history? That's the question behind the popular new streaming series about a beloved king of Israel. Ephraim Graham takes us behind the scenes of the House of David.
And the push to post the 10 Commandments. More than a dozen states are challenging the status quo to put God's laws in public schools. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. Thanks for being with us.
You know, imagine being arrested not only for praying, but for the contents of your prayers. In fact, in Britain, that is exactly what's happening, and you're too close to an abortion clinic.
Yeah, in Scotland, people living near abortion clinics could even be charged for activities inside their homes. Dale Hurd reports on the first UK citizen convicted of a thought crime.
While many knew about the case against a British Army veteran, Vice President J.D. Vance brought it to the world's attention again in a speech to the Munich Security Conference.
A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own.
When Adam Smith Connor was approached by police officers, they asked, "What is the nature of your prayer today?"
What is the nature of that? I'm praying for my son.
Making the charge against him what many are calling a thought crime. We met Smith Connor at a church in Southampton, England, where he told us of a terrible dream that led him into the pro-life movement, a dream in which he was butchering a baby.
I was carving up this baby as if I was carving up the Sunday roast. I didn't have any sense of guilt or anything. It was no feeling of anything as I was doing this. When I woke up, it was like a nightmare in reverse. So what horrified me was that I'd carved up this child who I knew it was my son, and it horrified me that I hadn't felt anything as I did it. And over the following days, I came to realize it related to an abortion that I'd paid for 2 decades earlier. That abortion hadn't even crossed my mind, but God knew that that was sitting on my conscience and knew that I wasn't going to figure it out for myself, that needed to be cleansed. So I feel that he gave me that vision, that dream, to wake me up to what had happened.
Adam began to go to abortion clinics to pray for his son and would eventually be charged for it.
They asked me to leave the area. I declined because I don't think that prayer can ever be considered a criminal act or illegal. I was out of line of sight from the clinic behind a tree, and I didn't look at anyone, I didn't approach anyone, I didn't speak to anyone.
The United Kingdom's new buffer zone law makes it illegal for anyone to do anything that intentionally or recklessly influences someone's decision to use abortion services. The law will apply within a 150-meter radius of the abortion service provider.
By using a word like influence, it's very unclear what the law means.
Lois McClatchy Miller with Alliance Defending Freedom International says the government's use of the word influence has created a very broad law that could potentially be used against private conversations, as well as a person's thoughts and prayers.
But what about a mother asking her daughter, "Are you sure?" Is that influence? What about a friend who's offering support to a woman who's considering continuing her pregnancy? Is that influence?
A 63-year-old retired medical scientist from Bournemouth, England, was also put on trial for standing near an abortion clinic and holding up a sign reading, "Here to talk if you want," and talking to women who approached her.
So what are you up to today, sorry?
I'm praying.
You're praying?
Yes.
Okay.
In Scotland, this letter sent to citizens warns that anyone living within an abortion clinic buffer zone could violate the law while inside their own homes. Some think it could include praying near a window if a woman seeking an abortion walks by. Smith-Connor said he's grateful Vice President Vance defended him before world leaders. Adam Smith-Connor is a British Army vet who risked his life in Afghanistan for the cause of freedom, only to return home to be convicted of a thought crime. Smith-Connor said he thinks about the personal price he paid and how a close friend gave his life to protect the very rights that now have been taken away by his government.
I've got a profound sense of sadness for our nation. The fact that we have plummeted to such a depth so quickly. I believe in the Bible and what the Bible says, and I lived that out in my life. And the fact that I'm now convicted for doing that, I think, is quite shocking. And the absurdity of a trial for the contents of your mind, the contents of your prayers, just has no place in a liberal, free, democratic society, and yet here we are.
An appeal of Adam's conviction has been set for July.
CBN senior international reporter Dale Hurd joins me now for more. Dale, just unbelievable. We've heard similar stories of Christians being targeted in the UK. How did this once stronghold of the faith become hostile, so hostile to Christianity?
And it's probably a long answer, but it is ironic that in this officially Christian nation where the monarch is anointed with oil by the archbishop, that Christians today feel like second-class citizens. That's not an exaggeration. Look, we just had a Muslim mufti appointed the head of education in Britain. There is no way that they would appoint an outspoken, Bible-believing Christian to any position like that. It's believed to be the first overtly religious leader appointed to a job like that, and it was a Muslim. And of course, folks have heard about how they celebrated Ramadan in the Windsor Palace. So, yeah, it is a really strange state of affairs, and it has to do with what happens when Christianity is the state religion, which it is not here, and Christianity is thriving. Christianity seems to struggle in nations like that, where it is the state church.
Dale, it's not just Christians. You have reported extensively on the rise of anti-Semitism in the UK. Describe what's happening and why anti-Semitism has become so prevalent.
Yeah, it's exploded. And in a story that I did recently, we found that most Jews in Britain are thinking about leaving. This is unheard of in a country that has been a haven for Jews, where Jews have fled to. And one would think that this anti-Semitism is coming from the influx of refugees from the Middle East. And that is a primary reason. But it was interesting to discover that close behind is the far left. And this is the opinion of Jews in Britain, saying, number one, it is radical Muslims. Number two, it's the far left in Britain. And number three, it's teenagers that have essentially learned anti-Semitism on social media. They now today hold views about Jews and Jew hatred that their parents don't hold. And they're sort of indoctrinating one another. And this has been a very dangerous trend.
Dale, last question. Do you see any hope for Christianity in the UK?
Yes, and I know you agree with me that with the Lord there's always hope, and the hope in Britain is outside of the established church. You know, Americans are very enamored with the cathedrals in Britain and in Europe, but the Christians there, they kind of associate those with a dead faith, and the future of Christianity in Britain is outside, although some may worship in these cathedrals, it's primarily outside them, in hotel conference centers, in storefronts, where churches are thriving. And people want to see spiritual power in their services as well. This has been a key element in the growth of Christianity in Britain. They're tired of dead faith. They want to see some action at church.
Yeah, and a story that you have reported on extensively is this whole idea of reverse missiology, those coming from the global south who have a passion and a desire to rekindle the faith in the Western countries are opening these huge churches all across Great Britain, all across Europe, which is also an encouraging sign as well. Dale, thank you so much for your excellent reporting. Appreciate it. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Great reporting. Well, coming up, behind the scenes at the House of David. Meet the creative minds and talented actors creating this inspiring new streaming series. Welcome back to Christian World News. The saga of King David is one of the most epic stories in the Bible. A look at this beloved character is now streaming in a brand new series called House of David, and I've been watching it, and it's amazing. Our colleague CBN's Ephraim Graham traveled to Greece to bring us this behind-the-scenes look at this Prime Video's new venture into biblical storytelling.
Can one stone change the course of history?
This simple question sets the stage for the cinematic biblical series House of David, a full-scale retelling of David's rise from an overlooked shepherd boy to Israel's most celebrated king.
Why do my brothers get to fight? And I'm stuck here.
David, you are not a man of blood.
Michael Iskander leads the cast as David.
God does not see what man sees.
He sees into the heart. And you have the heart of a lion.
They're casting for this series. They have all these actors in place, but they still haven't identified their David. And they go through thousands of audition tapes and wait months and months and months. And finally, we come to you.
Why? I don't know.
How does that feel?
Scary. I mean, like, obviously, like, with an opportunity like this and to tell this type of story, it's so special and everyone wants it. But it's scary because there's so much pressure, you know, being the one person to do this. Like, I like to think that there's plenty of people who could have done it. I'm just the lucky one.
At the time, you're on Broadway in a successful play, and you kind of have a desire to be David. Tell me, where'd that desire come from?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew. I think it goes back to the show The Chosen. Like, I watch The Chosen, and every single time I watch an episode, I cry. And I see the Bible come to life. And not only that, but I see human beings in front of me. I don't see some big, grand person far away. And I've always been inspired by that, and I've wanted to be a part of it. And so I thought to myself, man, if they ever have an audition, you know, I'd love to maybe play King David in a flashback scene, maybe. Like young King David, herding the sheep or whatever. And that was a long time ago. That was 2021. And so to get the opportunity now to do that, but on a full scale, and to dive deeply into the story of David, it's such a full circle moment from that initial spark.
The Philistines have assembled. The sparks behind this epic series, John Irwin, whose film credits include Jesus Revolution and I Can Only Imagine.
It's a story of family, I think. I mean, it's a story of destiny.
And John Gunn, whose work includes The Case for Christ and I Still Believe.
I saw the print of a hand, larger than a weaver's basket.
They have a giant. What?
How do you balance telling the story that most of us think we know with biblical accuracy, but then telling a compelling story?
We feel like a great responsibility for the source material, and you want to get it right, and you want to honor it. And the way to honor it is to understand the heart of it, and then to fill in those gaps in ways that supports the truth of the heart of that. And then you get a lot of help from people that go like, no, this is great, but this is actually inaccurate.
The Bible is kind of like, you know, flying through a theme park in a jet, you know? it's a historical overview at a high altitude. So it's wonderful to, I like Ken Burns uses this phrase, emotional archaeology, which I really like. And to, first of all, love the material, learn the material, and then really think about, okay, these are real people. And if they're in chapter 3, they don't know about chapter 4. And then you read all that David was going through in the Psalms, and then you cross-reference them to the life that he was living, you know, You read 1st and 2nd Samuel, and you know, it really comes to life.
My king, I will fight the giant.
Fight him with the same spirit you bring into this room.
Send me your javelin!
Goliath! Bringing the role of Goliath to life is bodybuilder, actor, and Mortal Kombat star Martin Ford.
How does Mortal Kombat prepare you to play Goliath?
Patience. I mean, it's quite funny you should say that because the characters are kind of very similar with Shao Kahn and Goliath in a sense of they are the ultimate bad guy, larger than life, and a power that's unrecognizable by humans.
When I think of Goliath in biblical terms, I don't even think of Goliath as a human per se, because we're thinking giant, massive. So what's the difference in what people are thinking versus what we're going to see?
Well, I think the power of allowing us to tell the story with a backstory allows you to see him more as what you've just suggested that you don't, as human. And if we can have that relatability to the fact that he is half human, he does have a family, he has brothers and a mother, and there's a driving force, there's a motivation for his actions.
It's not about the greatness of the giant. It is about the greatness of God.
Are you afraid?
Terrified.
What has David taught you playing him? What lesson have you?
Oh man, what hasn't he taught me? I think most of all, David has taught me courage and bravery. Because the one thing that David always does is he doesn't run from his fears, he goes right to them. And I think that's a lesson we all need, is to not run away from our fears, but to face our fears, to stand up against the giant and to say, I am here. Even though we might be scared, like, might be terrified, we still choose to stand against giants.
Again, I ask this question. Can one stone change the course of history?
Ephraim Graham, CBN News, Athens, Greece.
Up next, religious tyranny or religious freedom? The controversy over the push to put the 10 Commandments into public schools. Welcome back to Christian World News. This week, the Texas Senate passed a bill requiring the 10 Commandments be placed in school classrooms.
It's part of a move by Republicans. More than a dozen states that have introduced similar legislation. CBN's Paul Petit reports from Texas.
Bless his food, bless his family. Thank you for the great message last night.
Adam Althouse believes his 16-year-old son Dylan and other Texas high school students would benefit from daily seeing the 10 Commandments in their classrooms.
They can look at it. They could say, maybe go home to their parents and say, you know, what does this mean? What does, shall not covet thy neighbor's wife? What does that mean? So put the thought in their mind.
Texas is joining at least 14 states where legislators want to reintroduce Christian principles in public school spaces.
Posting the 10 Commandments in our public school classrooms allows students to have an understanding and an appreciation for our heritage, for systems of law, and the connection of the 10 Commandments to Western civilization.
Jonathan Sines, an attorney with the group Texas Values, helped draft the Texas bill.
We're confident with the recent election results that this is what voters want. They want to make sure that we preserve our values and that we teach about these things in our public schools, and we get back to basics.
Lawmakers in these states are also seeking to take advantage of the political shift and Supreme Court rulings, opening the door to more religious expression in schools.
God is mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. It's on our money, in music, like God Bless America. It's in our literature, and it's in the pledge to the flag. Why would we not mention God in our schools? The courts need to understand that by removing God, they are replacing it with nothing.
Opponents, including the ACLU and others, however, argue such measures violate the First Amendment.
This is clearly outrageous. This is not religious liberty. This is religious tyranny.
Louisiana became the first state to mandate displaying the Ten Commandments in classrooms. Freedom from Religion Foundation is among those challenging that law.
It's up to parents to indoctrinate or not their children or expose them to whatever so-called holy books they want or whatever edicts or mandates they think are true, but not for our public schools. So, of course, we're very alarmed at all the copycat legislation.
State legislators here in Texas believe their bill will stand up to scrutiny following a 2022 Supreme Court case that ruled a Washington State high school football coach had the right to pray on the field immediately after football games.
Only thing I even asked for from the very beginning was to be reinstated as a coach and to be able to pray on the 50-yard line. But the great part about it is it just took one person to stand up and said, enough is enough.
Coach Joe Kennedy believes the ruling in his favor has energized the fight for religious freedom in schools.
People are standing up. They're being bold in their faith. They're being bold in their constitutional rights as Americans.
It's basically a combination.
While Althouse wants Texas schools to prioritize academics, he also sees value in an exposure to biblical principles that have shaped Western civilization.
I think being there in the schools is important. I think it would be good to have in the schools.
If it's good enough for the Supreme Court also to display in that courtroom, should be good enough for a public school classroom.
In Texas, Paul Petit, CBN News.
Finally this week, Christian students at Western Kentucky University got creative in spreading the gospel.
They sure did. About 70 students wrote the Gospel of John in chalk along a 2-mile stretch of the campus. Wow. The students from Baptist Campus Ministry, Crew, and Hilltoppers for Christ wrote and illustrated all 21 chapters of John's Gospel. One student said, quote, "I pray this sparks a revival among our college campuses and that Jesus will be made known."
That is so cool. Look at all that
video.
Scripture, the Word of God.
I love it. I love it. It does not return void.
That's it for this week's edition of Christian World News.
Until next week, from all of us here, goodbye and God bless you.